Yeah.
Okay, Thursday night, parsha. Welcome everyone. Today is not just Thursday, it's also Tu B'Shvat, the 15th day of the month of Shvat. So tonight's class, we're going to talk about Tu B'Shvat and about the parsha, which is Parshas Yisro, or Yitro, depending how you pronounce it, or Jethro, if you go for some English. So we handed out the source sheets, and everybody has a blank piece of paper as well and a pen. And before we get started, the name of this class is Strap Yourself to the Tree with Roots. That's the name of the class, which is actually words from a Bob Dylan song, the best Jewish songwriter. Modern day, the best Jewish songwriter really is probably David HaMelech, King David, although I don't know if those are considered songs, but they are psalms. Okay, strap yourself to the tree with roots. So strap yourself in, and we're going to get started. But before we start, tonight's class was actually dedicated by a dear friend of mine, Dan Schechter, in memory of Tzvi Ben Herbert, whose yahrzeit was Yud Gimel Shvat, the 13th of Shvat, which is 2 days ago. So this Torah learning tonight, here in person in the Chabad house and in YouTube land, is dedicated to the memory of Tzvi Ben Herbert. Okay. Strap yourself to the tree with roots. But before you do that, take your piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. I prefer pencils, but I don't have one at the moment. And draw a picture of a tree. Don't spend like 5 hours on it because we don't have 5 hours here.
Does it matter which paper?
It does not matter. And the picture is just for yourself. If it's really good, maybe we'll frame it and put it on the wall. Please draw a picture of a tree. And I'm going to ask you to show them afterwards. And yeah, I'm not going to draw one because it defeats the whole purpose of it, as we'll see in a minute. But I'm drawing one in my mind. That's what I'm thinking about. Give yourself a minute to draw that tree. If you're out there in YouTube land, you could also take a piece of paper and draw a tree as well. Are you done? You don't like your tree? It's no good. Okay, start again. Nobody has to see this. It's not going anywhere. It's just between you and yourself. Anybody finish their trees?
Okay.
Can you hold up so I can see your tree?
Actually, drew two because the first one I started
Okay.
too close to
Tree
the
number
top.
one. Tree number.
I started
two
too close to the top with this one.
And you give yourself enough
So,
space.
Yeah, so I made it a little bit smaller and a little taller.
Okay. Okay. Oh, you're still working on it over there?
Wow.
Still. I said
Can
not
I
to
draw
take 5
something under
hours.
my tree?
What?
Can I draw something under my tree?
You can draw whatever you
I
want.
better not. What? I better not be on.
The exercise is to draw a tree, but you could draw after you draw the tree, you draw whatever you want. Then we're going to jump right in and strap yourself to the tree with roots. I love those lyrics.
I drew a bench under my tree so somebody could, make a camp there. Oh, that's so cute.
Ooh, that's nice. That's right. By the way, the song that Bob Dylan wrote these lyrics, Strap Yourself to the Tree with Roots, is called You Ain't Going Nowhere. And he wrote it actually in Woodstock, New York, upstate. You've ever been there? And it was during a period that he had of, I guess you could say, self-imposed exile after he'd hit a lot of fame, became very well known. But he had a self-imposed exile in Woodstock, New York, and he was writing music, writing songs. And this song, if I catch it correctly, was really about him settling down. That was the idea, settling down, family, and so forth. Did you finish your tree over there yet? Can I see? Okay. Okay.
The best tree.
Can one of you, I just need one example. Can one of you pass me your tree? We won't call you out live.
Okay.
It was.
It says Paige's name on the paper.
Okay.
No, it doesn't.
So here's the tree. This is the tree. It's very beautiful. As you can see, it has wonderful growth up above, lots of leaves. It's very vibrant and green. I'm sure it's not in color, but I'm sure it's very green. It's beautiful. There's a nice feature here. The bench at the bottom. What's that? A little sign? Tree camp.
Yeah.
It's a little sign. So you know what it is when you get there. And a bench to sit on and bask and enjoy the shade from the tree. Now, what I note interestingly is that everybody who drew a tree that I saw, your tree, was missing something very, very important. I'm sorry. Was missing something. What were you missing? You were all missing the roots of the tree. Now, isn't that interesting? This was my, those are upside down roots. You can turn upside down. Now, isn't it interesting? This is actually what I thought would happen. And I wanted to test it. I wanted to see if I ask anyone to draw a tree, will you draw the roots? And interestingly, this is not a scientific study, but in our little control group over here, I wonder what it's like in YouTube land, but in our little control group, nobody drew the roots of the tree.
There we go.
Now, Winston Churchill came to Israel, which was then called Palestine. I think it was 1921. He, I believe, was the Secretary of State at the time. Is that right? Secretary of State? Sound about right? 1921, you don't know. You don't know American history. I'm Canadian, so I also don't know American history.
You're right.
I know, don't hold it against me.
I'm not going to hold it against.
Okay, thank you. What part of Canada? The good part.
I don't know what that means.
I was born in Vancouver and I grew up in Calgary.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but in any event, I think it was 1921. People will correct me if I'm wrong. That Winston Churchill visited Israel, the Holy Land. It was then called Palestine, and he came to Tel Aviv. And the mayor of Tel Aviv, Dizengoff, you ever heard of Dizengoff Square? Yeah. Dizengoff was the mayor of Tel Aviv at the time. And they had, I don't know if it was Dizengoff himself or others had reported that Tel Aviv was a vibrant city with a beautiful tree-lined boulevard like you see in Europe. Beautiful. The problem was that it wasn't true. Tel Aviv, Israel was not even officially a country at the time, right? It was a fledgling economy. Things were tough, the 1920s. And so the boulevard, the fancy street, which was supposed to be lined with the beautiful trees, wasn't. So quickly, Dizengoff made some arrangements, and he had some people transplant tall trees from elsewhere in the land, I'm not sure where they'd already taken root, and he had them transplant them and put them in Israel. And, I'm sorry, put them in Tel Aviv on the main boulevard there. And when Churchill came, so people wanted to see Churchill, and it was a lot of people, it was very crowded, and some people climbed up the trees so they could get a better view. Guess what happened when you climb a tree that was just replanted? The trees fell over. The trees fell over. Dizengoff was embarrassed. The trees are toppling over. And Churchill, unfortunately, I can't remember the exact quote. I don't know if we know the exact quote, but said something to the effect, he quickly quipped something along the lines of, a tree needs to have roots. I'm getting the quote wrong, but that's the basic. You could look it up. That'd be great. I guess right. Churchill, Israel, 1921 or something like that. Tel Aviv. You let me know. So what's the point? The point is that nobody drew the roots, yet the roots are the most important part of the tree, as we're going to see a little bit later. But let's start with a little bit about Tu B'Shvat, the holiday.
That which has no roots is bound to wither.
There you go. That which has no roots is bound to wither. Therefore comes Bob Dylan many years later and says, strap yourself to the tree with roots. Okay, let's start. So the Mishna, first Mishna in the volume tractate Masechta Rosh Hashana, says as follows: Arba'a Rosh Hashanah. When you have the source sheets, you can follow along. I don't have English translation for everything. I only have for the Mishna English translation, but we'll do our best and I'll translate as we go. And as always, please stop me if you have any questions or comments or want to clarify something. So the Mishnah says, Arba'a Rosh Hashanah. There are actually 4 days in the year that are considered Rosh Hashanah. What are they? We're going to go through most of them quickly because that's not the focus for tonight's shir. Be'echad b'Nisan is Rosh Hashanah Malachim. The first day of the month of Nisan, which is the month of Pesach, is the new year for the kings, meaning that it's from that date, the first day of Nisan, that the years of a king's rule are counted. Sometimes you see in the writing of the prophets, it was such and such a year to so-and-so's reign. Okay. As well as it's also the new year for the order of the festivals, meaning that Nisan determines which is considered the first Yom Tov, the first holiday of the year. The first holiday of the year officially is considered Pesach. Okay. Next, the next Rosh Hashanah is Be'echad Be'elul, the first day of Elul, which is Rosh Hashanah L'Maiser Behema. That is the new year for animal tithes. What does that mean? That all the animals born prior to that date, that is the first day of Elul, belong to the previous tithe year. You have to separate animals. And our tithe is a single unit, whereas those born after that date belong to the next tithing year. So if you have 10 animals from the previous born before Elul, you've got to tithe one of them. Okay. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Oimrim, they say that Be'echad B'Tishrei, that it's actually the new year for animals is actually the first of Tishrei, also known as today Rosh Hashanah. Right. Bechet b'Tishrei, continuing the Mishnah, on the first of Tishrei is Rosh Hashana l'Shonim. That's the new year for counting the years, as the Gemara explains later. That's how we begin the count of years. Also, l'Shonim, u'l'Shmitim, u'l'Yovlos, l'Netia, u'l'Yirokos, period. Also, for calculating when is the sabbatical year. As we know, there's a 7-year cycle, and the 7th year is the Shemitah year, the sabbatical year. You can't work the land. How do you count the years from? When does it begin from? It begins from the first of Tishrei. For planting, which is regards to the laws of Orla, then you're not allowed to have the fruits from a tree grown in the first 3 years. Also for tithing vegetables, meaning depending when they were picked, when you tithe them, period. Now, here we get to our point for tonight. Be'echad b'Shvat, on the first day of the month of Shvat, that already happened 2 weeks ago, is Rosh Hashana le'ilon. That is the new year for the trees, meaning that the fruit of a tree that was formed prior to the date of the first of Shvat, again, that was 2 weeks ago, belonged to the previous year's tithe. Meaning that we're going to calculate various different types of tithes. This is all only in the land of Israel, by the way. The Holy Land, the tithes that took place, Meiser Oni, Meiser Sheni, different types of tithes, etc. Well, how do you know, did you tithe enough already from your crop? Well, you have to begin the year and end the year at some point in time to know what is my crop for the year and did I do the appropriate tithes and which year of the 7-year cycle are we in such that I know which tithe applies to which year. So he says that therefore the Rosh Hashana le'ilon for the tree is on the first of Shvat. Kedivrei Beis Shammai. That is in accordance with the teaching of Beit Shammai. But Beis Hillel oimrim b'chamisha asar boy, and that's the halacha. Beis Hillel says the new year for trees is not on the first of Shvat. It's actually on the 15th of Shvat, which is today, which outside of the land of Israel doesn't technically have any relevance, seemingly, or very little relevance, but it's very relevant in the land of Israel. So this is very much a holiday connected to the land of Israel. What holiday is Pesach connected to? I'm sorry, which land is Pesach connected to? Egypt. Which land is Shavuos, the giving of the Torah? What land is that connected to? The desert, really, the desert, right? What about Sukkot, the holiday of Sukkot? Sukkot, also connected to the desert. Also the desert, right? Why? Why is it the desert?
Because it was on the way to Israel. We set up the little camps in the desert.
There you go.
Yeah.
What about Purim? Where's Purim connected to? Persia, or in plain English, outside of Israel. Right? That's one reason that the Gemara says we don't say Hallel on Purim. Because the Gemara says you don't say Hallel for a miracle outside the land of Israel. Anyway, which holiday is connected to the land of Israel? Where do we find a celebration, a holiday that's connected to geographically to Israel? And the answer is Tu B'Shvat. Tu B'Shvat is the yearning for the connection to the land of Israel, the planting of trees, which need the roots, because the roots show there's a permanence there. When you plant a tree, especially a fruit tree, it may be you may never even harvest the fruits, depending how old you are when you plant the tree. It takes a couple of years for the tree to produce fruits. It's about establishing roots in the land. And so Tu B'Shvat, in a sense, is the yearning of the Jewish people to return to the land of Israel, in a sense. Okay. Even though I just said before that there's no practical relevance outside of Israel to Tu B'Shvat, that is not a fair statement, and it's not an accurate statement. Let's look at the next source, which is the Shulchan Aruch. I wrote Shulchan Aruch. That was a typo. It's not a different book. It's a typo. So the Shulchan Aruch says as follows. There are certain days when we don't recite the Tachanun prayer. That is the confessional prayer typically said after the Amidah, the silent prayer. So it says as follows. Nogu, we are accustomed, we don't say the Tachanun prayer on the 15th of Av. We're not going to discuss that whole day today. We'll save that for the summer. Nor do we say the Tachanun, the confessional prayer, the supplications on the 15th of Shvat. V'loi b'Rosh Chodesh, nor do we say it on Rosh Chodesh. V'loi b'mincha shalafanav, nor on the mincha preceding Rosh Chodesh. V'loi b'Chanukah, we don't say it on Chanukah. And v'yesh oivim gam b'mincha shalafanav. Some say even mincha, the day before Chanukah, we also don't say it. V'chein noyadin, and that is the common practice. And the Purim ein niflin al paneim, also Purim we don't say the Tachanun prayer. And b'lag ba'omer ein niflin. And also like V'omer we don't say it. And also Be'erev Yom Kippur ein niflin. The eve of Yom Kippur we don't. V'chein erev Rosh Hashana afilu shachris. And likewise the eve of Rosh Hashana, not just by mincha, but even in the morning, shachris on erev Rosh Hashana we don't say it. So the point of our halacha here is to highlight that Chamisha Asar B'Shvat, the 15th of Shvat, which is today, which is called Tu B'Shvat colloquially, we don't recite the Tachanun prayer, whether you're in Israel or not. So everybody benefits. You don't have to say the Tachanun prayer on Rosh Hashana. On this Rosh Hashana, I slipped up. I said Rosh Hashana, even though the Mishna really says that Tu B'Shvat is one of the Rosh Hashanas. Now, interestingly, on the page of the Shulchan Aruch is a commentary called the Magen Avraham, the Shield of Abraham. And he says as follows on this law, in the next source. He says that B'chamisha Asar B'Shvat is Rosh Hashana Le'ilonos, that is the new year for trees, right? As we just saw in the Mishnah. Look at this. V'noyagin ha'ashkenazim laharbois b'minei peiros shel ilonos. The Ashkenazim, not the Sephardim, the Ashkenazim are accustomed to eat lots of fruits from a tree. And as is the common practice, many try to find fruits from the land of Israel if they can. Nowadays, it's also the custom, perhaps even more so, for the Sephardim to do this. There's a lot of Kabbalistic ideas behind it we're not going to get into tonight. Each of the 7 species from the land of Israel represents a whole different thing according to Kabbalah. There's different types of fruits. There's fruits that you eat with the peel, such as grapes. There's fruits that you... what happened? Right? There's fruits that you eat without the peel, like a pomegranate. Thank you. So you eat the inside and throw away the outside. Then there's also fruits where you eat the outside. Am I getting this right? And throw away, yeah. There are also fruits you eat the outside and throw away the inside. Throw away the seed. A date. A date is a good one. Or olives, that's right. Okay. So let's take a look in this letter. The next source on the page is a letter from the Lubavitcher Rebbe to a person. It was written in the year 1944 on the 21st day of Shvat, the month of Shvat. 1944 is written to a person named Bez Baradka. I don't know if I pronounced his name correctly. As far as I know, and I didn't come up with much information on my research yet, but as far as I know, the Rebbe knew this Mr. Bez Baradka from when he lived in Paris, France, as far as I know. So he says as follows in this letter to this, I don't know what his name, what is the name Bez Baradka? I'm not sure. Anyway, there are different parts of a tree, right? And we all noted providentially that everyone here drew a tree without roots. Now, you all drew the leaves. The leaves are obviously very important, right? If you don't have leaves, you don't have photosynthesis, and the plant dies. So obviously, you need the leaves of the tree. And the leaves protect the tree. That's how photosynthesis happens. There's also the fruits of the tree. The fruits are where that's what a person could enjoy, could benefit directly from that. And that's where the seeds are. You can plant more trees, etc. There's the trunk of the tree. That's the actual body of the tree. There's many parts to a tree. But everybody left out the roots. That was my experiment. So let's read from the Rebbe, what do the roots represent? Hashodesh is ne'elam hu me'in haroya. Fascinating. Of all the parts of the tree, you don't see the roots. Maybe that's why nobody drew them, because you don't see them. Aval ikir chayes ha'ilon al yodoi nimtzu. But the main vitality, the main life force of the tree is delivered via the roots. That's how it lives. Even though, even though, here, listen to this language he writes, 1944. Even though the leaves draw from the air the necessary nutrients for their life, that's also known as photosynthesis, which I remember from like 8th grade biology or something like that. And likewise, the leaves also serve another function. They shield the tree from the heat of the sun a little bit as well. But the roots are the main part of the tree. If you don't have roots, nothing can happen. It cannot live at all. Furthermore, what keeps the tree standing? Like the story of Winston Churchill. Everybody climbed up the trees in Tel Aviv, in what was then called Palestine, and the trees toppled over because the roots had not sunken into they had not attached in the ground yet. So the roots are what keep the tree upright. They will keep the tree standing. And if you have strong roots, guess what else you have? You have a strong tree. If you got strong roots, you don't need to worry about any wind that's going to come and blowing. You're good to go. The tree will stand firm. Continuing on the next side of the sheet. Another point is the shoydish. So now that we know the shoydish, the roots of the tree are the main life force, or rather they deliver the main life force to keep the tree alive and to keep the tree standing firm on this earth. So what are the roots in my spiritual life? So the Rebbe continues, HaShodesh hi hu emunah. The roots are a person's emunah, a person's faith. That it's through our emunah, those are the roots that connect us to our source of life. If the tree, even if it has leaves and everything that a tree needs, but if you take it out of the ground, there's only so long it's going to be able to live. It needs to be connected in the ground. The roots need to be planted firmly in the ground. So too, we need to plant ourselves firmly in our emunah. Our emunah is what keeps us alive. It's what keeps us connected to our source. Who is? That's the creator of the world. And even when even when I become very smart, I'm growing in my knowledge of the Torah, I'm growing in my fulfillment of the mitzvahs, so I'm becoming my own mensch, my own person. No. Nevertheless, even then, but really your life doesn't come from that. Your life comes from your emunah, your belief in Hashem, in Judaism, and in the Torah. Questions or comments so far? These are the roots. Now, let's go even before the roots. Let's take a step back in time. If we don't have roots, the tree will not live. If we don't have roots, the tree will topple over. Doesn't matter how big it is, how majestic it is, it doesn't matter. But let's take a step back. Even before the roots, how did we get to a tree in the first place? Everything starts with a seed. But let's take a look at the Gemara first. In Masech-Vov Metzia, it's a curious Gemara. Daf Pei Hey Omen Aleph. The Gemara says as follows: Reb Zera was one of the great sages of the Gemara. He lived in, we already mentioned the place he lived in Bavel in Persia. He lived in Bavel. So the Gemara says as follows: Reb Zera Yisolik la'ara de Yisrael, when he went up to the land of Israel, because going to Israel, that's Aliyah. You're having an ascent, you're going to a higher level. When Reb Zera moved, he made Aliyah, he moved from the land of Bavel to the land of Israel. So previously, he had only studied the Babylonian Talmud because he was in Babylon. He studied the Babylonian Talmud, Talmud Bavli, which is what most of us study nowadays. But when he moved to the land of Israel, Yosef Me'atayim Nisa, he fasted 100 days, 100 times, in order to forget the Babylonian Talmud. What in the world does that mean? Who would intentionally want to forget anything they learn, let alone Torah, let alone the Talmud Bavli? Yet he went out of his way fasting 100 times to cause himself to forget intentionally the Torah that he had studied. What's going on over here?
This is name meaning zera, like seed.
No, that's an ayin. Zera means
I know
small.
it's an ayin, but
It means small.
I know it's, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I know it's an ayin, but I figured you could have fun with it anyway.
Okay, sure. Okay. So to address this point, yeah, you understand the question? How could Reb Zera go out of his way to forget Torah? Especially that's usually the way information and the acquisition of knowledge typically goes, is that we build and we build and we build on our previous knowledge, right? If you're going to study calculus, you don't jump into calculus. You start with basic mathematics. Then you move on to whatever, geometry, you move on to algebra. And each stage of knowledge, each new step of knowledge typically is building on the previous information that you already have. So what do you need to forget the Talmud Bavli for? Just add to it, build on top of it. But no, Reb Zeir went out of his way fasting 100 fasts. Let me forget everything I know. It's strange. Let's take a look at the next source. The next source was written in the year 1905-06. This part is 1905, I think it was written, by the 5th Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Shalom Dever Schneerson. So he writes as follows. The Bechol, in the middle of the first line, the Bechol Aliyah, every time that there's any type of Aliyah, there's an ascent to a new level. You have to neutralize, you have to let go of the previous level. Think of it like climbing a ladder. If you're climbing a ladder, you're trying to get to the next rung, well, newsflash, the only way to get to the next rung is if you let go of the rung that you're currently holding on to. You have to actively let go. Now, what happens when you let go?
You might fall.
You might fall, right? First of all, before you get to the next level, you might fall. It's specifically at that point that you are the most vulnerable. But that's also how you get to the next level. So there has to be, between one level to the next, there has to be an emptiness and an openness. Where again, that's when you're vulnerable, but that's also how you progress to the next level. I lost my place. Oh, and then you can reach the new level. The davke kasher yeh b'vchinas bittul b'metzias lagamre mikol v'kol mimadrega tachtoina. Specifically when you've completely left behind the previous level. Or like they say, check your baggage at the door. Don't bring your schmutz with you. Leave it behind. Check it at the door. Now, in the case of Reb Zeir, he doesn't have baggage. It wasn't baggage. It wasn't junk. It wasn't bad. It was the Talmud Bavli. But he also had to check it at the door. Why? Because even though for him it was a tremendous pleasure, a spiritual pleasure to learn the Gemara, and it's also, even if not spiritual pleasure, it's information, it's knowledge. That's a good thing. Knowledge is always good. But he had to forget it. He had to let go of any trace of that experience that he had, as if it never happened. Why? Because that's going to enable him to truly have a new learning experience, to truly have a new growth experience of a completely new type that he'd never had before. Now we can get to an even higher level. Skip to the next paragraph there. The third line at the end. For example, when you're learning wisdom, when you want to reach a completely new level, not going from addition to multiplication, where they build on each other, but when you're entering a completely new field, uncharted territories, then you have to totally obliterate. You have to completely let go of the previous place where you were. That's like what Reb Zeir did. That's why Reb Zeir fasted 100 fasts to forget the Talmud Bavli, in order he could receive the teachings of the Talmud Yerushalmi. Because the Torah tells us that Torah's Eretz Yisrael, the Torah from the land of Israel, is on a completely different plane. It's not just more information that they had in Israel and they didn't have in Persia and Babylon. It's information on a qualitatively different plane of reality. So to access the Talmud Yerushalmi, he had to go through a letting go process so that he could be nothing. And now that he's nothing, he's open and exposed and ready for a completely new type of experience. Not just a new experience, a new type of experience. Yeah.
I don't love this idea.
Okay, why not?
Because I feel like it's giving the wrong message. Giving like, oh, if you wanna learn more in your studies about anything, especially Jewish stuff, you just have to forget everything else you've learned. Like, aren't we supposed to build on it and not just disregard it and move on to the next
I think you
thing?
can think of it as like unlearning.
Mhm.
I remember I had a teacher, you mind if I take 1 second?
Please go ahead.
That used to say in high school, it was a little bit of a critique of students, you know, you're gonna go to Israel for the year and you think you're gonna learn what you didn't learn the last 12 years and you're gonna cram it into 1 year, but before you can start that process, you have to unlearn.
Mhm.
Which I think what he meant by unlearning was like get rid of your preconceived notions and all your kind of, all the ideas that you have in your mind. So it could be, I didn't prepare that, but it could be that for Reb Zera, to learn the Yerushalmi after learning the Bavli, he wouldn't really be able to learn the Yerushalmi properly because the whole time he'd be comparing it and pulling it into what he already knows. That's just my thought.
What do you think about that?
What do you think
That's
about that?
interesting.
Well, Paige is the one who asked, so I'm asking her what she thinks.
I understand that, but I just worry that it could be applied to any learning and not just, oh, there's a Gemara from here and Gemara from here. It's like, oh, I learned, I don't know, Breshit. Now I'm gonna move on to Shmuel, but I'm gonna forget Breshit. Like, you wouldn't want to.
So-
Oh, your
so
mom's
you're
a
right.
doctor. You ever go to the doctor and you're like, but I read online that dot, 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 and the doctors get so mad, like they
Yeah.
get so mad. And they kind of want you to like unlearn, I guess, everything that you just read online so that they can actually tell you what's going on. Because as long as you're stuck in like what WebMD said, you're never really going to be listening to the doctor.
Sounds like someone looks on WebMD.
Ooh.
But by the way,
Does that make sense?
That makes sense, yeah, I don't know, I hear that, but like, you can't compare, oh, doctor's office, medical education to Torah, or just like, forget it.
Right,
You know,
I get
that's not true, because it is true, you know, Talmud Bavli and Talmud Yerushalmi, they're both true,
right.
so.
Did you ever meet someone? Did you ever know anyone who asks you a question, but they already know the answer?
Mhm.
So you start to, and they're like, no. And they don't, but I know, but you don't know the answer. Or maybe there's a different answer. Maybe there's a different perspective. Right? So sometimes, even if you know the answer, and maybe it's a correct answer, but if you hold on to that, you'll never be able to be open to a new answer, a different answer, from a completely different plane. So the doctor, I certainly hope, remembers, if they're my doctor at least, what they learned in medical school and what their continuing education and the newest research. I certainly hope they didn't forget that. Oh, don't. So, doctor, do you know what's wrong with me? No, I forgot all that. You don't want that. Right. But sometimes, if you're trying not just to add more information, but you're trying to change, you're trying to undergo a transformative experience, then you have to let go. You have to let go, as was mentioned, like of your preconceived notions. No, but I know, that's the person who asked you the question, but I already know the answer. No, if you already know the answer, then you can't learn.
Mhm.
You have to be empty, right? A simple analogy, right? If the cup is full, you can't pour anything else in it. So you need to empty the cup, and now can receive more. So certainly, in Torah also we don't want to forget. Did Rebbe Zera actually forget?
I don't think so.
It's hard to imagine that a sage of the caliber of Zera would go out of his way to forget the Torah. Who wants to forget the Torah? Even not Torah. Who wants to forget their medical training or their whatever? It's hard for me to imagine that Zera actually forgot. But he went through a forgetfulness, a spiritual letting go of that rung of the ladder, saying, okay, now I'm not attached to anything else. That's why there's a custom. I don't know if that's why, but that's perhaps one of the reasons why there's a custom that when a man and woman get married, that under the chuppah shouldn't have any knots. There's such a custom. You don't wear a tie, or you undo the tie if it's a man.
But your tzitzis.
Tzitzis is a mitzvah.
Asking.
And if you're wearing shoes or laces, you undo the shoelaces. And then, by the way, if you do that, I did this, then you tuck the shoelaces into your shoes so you don't trip on them on the way down walking at the chuppah.
Smart.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there's such a custom also that the kala, believe it or not, such a custom, the bride doesn't wear jewelry at the chuppah. No jewelry. Nothing in the pockets. Not your smartphone, for sure not. Nowadays, when we got married, there was no smartphone. But no smartphone in your pocket. Don't just turn it on vibrate. turn it off and put it somewhere else, right? No wallet, nothing in your pockets, no jewelry, no nothing. You're not attached to anything. Why? So you can attach to the person standing next to you on a chuppah. It's not a halacha, but there's such a custom, right? Because in order to become something new, which is what happens under the chuppah, you become man, woman, now you become v'hoyu lebasar echad, now you become something new. It has a new halachic status, and it has a new spiritual status. So in order to do that, you cannot be tied to anything. To let go of everything. Now, does that mean I forgot my watch and my jewelry and my wallet? No, I didn't forget those. I still have it, but letting go. I think we made the point. So that was what Rebbe Zera did. He forgot so he could let go of the rung of the ladder, undergoing a period of emptiness, a period of, and again, that's the most vulnerable point, that now he's able to have this new transformative experience going from Talmud Bavli, which Kabbalah explains as a certain level, to a higher level, which is the Torah of Eretz Yisrael, the Torah of the land of Israel, to do that. Now, next paragraph. Here's an analogy. We gave a few analogies already. Let's read an analogy from this author, the Rebbe Rosh himself. When you plant the seed in the ground, what is all the 7 species from the land of Israel that we mentioned for the Magen Avraham? He actually doesn't mention eating fruit from the land of Israel. He just mentions eating fruit. But there is a widespread custom, specifically fruit of the land of Israel. Whatever fruit it is, I don't care if you're a cucumber or a date or a fig, whatever, you all came from a seed. In fact, all of us came from a seed. Literally. So in order for a seed to grow, what has to happen? First of all, it has to be buried beneath the surface of the ground. If you leave it on the table, it's not going to grow. But second of all, what happens to the seed when it's under the ground? Does it just sprout? No. It decomposes first. The seed has to break apart first before new growth can sprout. You hear? It has to go through, in the language of Kabbalah, there's a yesh, from one being, to go to another state of being, there has to be the ayin be'emtza, a state of nothingness in between. That's the letting go of the rung of the ladder to rise to the next level. That's the seed being planted in the earth, decomposing, falling apart in order for new life to grow. The seed on its own already exists. The seed, is nothing wrong with the seed, but it ain't going to grow unless it decomposes first. It's got to break apart. And then and only then is when you can experience new growth, not just growth, not quantitative growth. That would be like learning mathematics, then calculus, or whatever, mathematics, geometry, calculus, algebra, etc. That's quantitative growth. That's adding on to what you already know. But to experience new growth, qualitatively different, for that, you need to have a period of decomposition. You need to fall apart. You need to enter darkness, a state of uncertainty, a state where there's a lack of clarity. You need to forget the Talmud Bava. Let go of it. Check your baggage at the door. Now let's jump into the last source for this evening, which is from another one of the Chabad Rebbe's. I guess I'm a little bit biased. The 4th Rebbe. This is now the previous Rebbe we just read. This is his father. His name is Shmuel. The Rebbe Marash, his name was Shmuel. And my son, who you've met, whose name is Shmuel, well, I don't know if you guys really met him, he's in Yeshiva, whatever. He shares a birthday with the Rebbe Marash, the 4th Rebbe. So at the bris, I don't actually recall if they're going to even discuss the name. Shmuel. So anyway, let's see what he says. On the middle of the first line. Anytime you're going to have something come out of nothing. The only way to get to a qualitatively new state of reality is by having a tzimtzum, a contraction, vehester, and a concealment. There has to be a point of darkness. There has to be a time when you let go of the ladder, and there has to be a time when the seed decomposes, when everything is hidden, when all you see is emptiness and nothingness and darkness. Like it says elsewhere, that it says in the Gemara that when the world was created, in the beginning was darkness, and then there was light. First comes darkness, then comes light. When we read the story of creation, how does the Torah tell us the order of the day? Vayihi erev, vayihi voikim. The Torah says first it was nighttime. It was dark. And then it was the morning. Then the sun rose. It has to be that way. It has to be that the night comes first. And after the night, vayihi voikim. That's when the morning comes. Skipping 2 lines. Now connecting to the parsha. I said that we would connect to the parsha. So far was Tu B'Shvat. The roots. The roots are the source of my life. The roots are my connection to the earth. The roots are my emunah that gives me life, that allows me to stand firm in this world. But in order to experience quantitatively different growth in this world, in order to truly become open to something new, to a higher growth, to a higher life experience, I need to first be like the seed under the earth that decomposes. So now it connects to the parsha. In this week's parsha, Parshas Yisro, it's annoying, right? We read about the giving of the Torah. So the Torah tells us, we all know the story, the Jewish people are camped around the mountain. They're told not to touch the mountain. But Moshe Rabbeinu climbs up the mountain. Up Mount Everest, except it's not the tallest mountain in the world, it's actually the smallest mountain in the world.
The what?
Smallest. He climbs up the mountain. There's thunder, there's lightning. Crazy experience. He's climbing up the mountain. As he's reaching up the mountain, he enters a place of darkness in the mountain. Moshe Kosov, the Pasuk says, Moshe nigash el ha'arafel. Moshe is approaching the Arafel. I forgot to take a survey of English translations of this, but it basically means the thick darkness, like a thick cloud of darkness. He approaches the darkness, Asher Sham Holokim. That's where Hashem is. That's what the verse tells us. Which I think on a pshat level, we were talking about different levels of interpretation on the Essence of Chassidus class earlier this week. On the level of pshat, the contextual meaning, it just means that Moshe climbed up the mountain, and as he climbed up the mountain, he was enveloped in a thick cloud of darkness, because you got to go up the mountain because Hashem's on the top of the mountain. That's where they're going to learn together b'chavrusa. That's where he's going to get the Torah and come back down with the 10 Commandments, with the luchos. But according to the level of Chassidus, the interpretation of Chassidus, you know what it means? It means like this. Moshe approached the thick cloud of darkness, not just because he had to pass through it, but dafka, asher shamahu Elokim. Specifically in the moment of darkness, that's where you find God. In the darkness. So Moshe didn't go through the darkness because he had no other choice. He went there intentionally. Because he knew that in those moments of decomposition, in those moments of letting go and vulnerability, in those moments, that's where I'm going to connect with Hashem in the most powerful way. You know, when everything is bright, when it's broad daylight and things are going great and you're happy and everything's going your way, and you have emunah then, you believe in Hashem then, and you learn Torah and do mitzvahs then, like, I'm not going to say it's not good, it is good, but no, okay. When it's dark, when you're letting go of the ladder and you're scared you might fall, when the seed is decomposing, it's in those moments that we have the greatest opportunity to plant our roots. And that's Tu B'Shvat. And that's specifically the holiday of Tu B'Shvat. In the land of Israel, we're planting trees. We plant trees outside of Israel too. But it's specifically, as we mentioned before, connected to the land of Israel. And it's the yearning of every Jew to pass through the darkness, to come out to a completely new place, the land of Israel. Even the people in the land of Israel, they also need to come to the land of Israel. We don't need to look too far to see what's going on nowadays in Israel. But without the roots, we have nothing. Without the connection to Emunah, the connection to Hashem, we have nothing. And planting the trees on Tu B'Shvat, or planting them or not. The concept of trees on Tu B'Shvat is the concept of a permanent presence in the land. We're connecting to the land, connecting to our emunah in a permanent way. And when we send those strong roots out, we strengthen ourselves with our emunah, and we're unshakable at that point. And Am Yisrael Chai, and we can never be blown down, can never be knocked down, because we are strong because we have our roots. Everything else, every other part of the tree, every other thing we do in our life, we didn't go into the letter to this Bezberadka, the letter from the Rebbe to Bezberadka, but the lessons from the other parts of the tree. We focus just on the roots. Every part of the tree, every part of your personality is important and is relevant and has messages for it. And every part of the tree has life lessons. But today we focused on the roots, because it's in the roots that we establish a permanence in this world, right? A fruit tree, it lasts longer than you. I don't mean you, right? The fruits are for you, for your children, for your grandchildren. There's a permanence there, which is really Torah mitzvahs. The Gemara says, "My payday, mitzvahs." What are fruits? Mitzvahs are fruits. When a Jew does a mitzvah, it's planting, it lasts forever. There's a permanence there. And I hope and pray that this Tu B'Shvat, this time when we're thinking about the trees, when we discussed in tonight's class, which was dedicated in memory of Tzvi Ben Herbert, whose yard sale was just a few days ago, I hope that the period of darkness, the orafa, the thick darkness that the Jewish people are currently enveloped in, and the time of decomposition, the challenging times that Am Yisrael has been through this last, I don't know how long it's been anymore. We lost track, year and a half, whatever it is. We're waiting to emerge. We're waiting for that completely new growth, which ultimately the greatest growth of all that we're all going to experience is with the coming of Mashiach, who is going to be the real morning, the real bright sunrise after a long darkness of Golus, of exile.
Amen.
Comments or questions? Okay, thank you for coming, and we will, God willing, same time, same place next week with another parsha class. Thank you, everyone on YouTube, for tuning in.